Thank you very much. I'll start by saying it's an honor to be here. This is great. I hope everyone's had their coffee this morning. I can feel a little buzz going through the room. But this is going to be quick. I've only got 5 minutes. So I want your full attention, and I'm going to get right to it. So I've been tasked, Tim Nash, I'm a sustainable economist. I've been tasked with providing some context for the nonprofit sector within Ontario's economy. So here's a nice little pie chart. We economists love our pie charts. This non-commercial services, that's sort of translated into the nonprofit sector. And so as you can see here, our sector accounts for 17% of Ontario's workforce. This is absolutely huge. This is massive, specifically when compared to some other sectors. Namely, I'm going to point out manufacturing, which gets so much attention. How much have I heard about manufacturing jobs in Ontario when our sector accounts for half again as many jobs as that sector? Right? So we are an economic force when it comes to employment. Now, when we look at here, this is Ontario GDP by sector, gross domestic product. And you can see here it's still absolutely huge. 12% of the Ontario economy comes from the sector, but it's not quite the same. We're sort of hitting below our weight a little bit, if you will. And the reason for this, in my mind, as I kind of poured through the numbers, comes down to this notion of GDP. Now, how many people remember back to their first year Introduction to Macroeconomics course? For those of you, if it's not front of mind, GDP is the combined output of all goods and services within the Ontario economy. And this is a financial metric, meaning that when something does not have a financial transaction, it does not get counted here. So a great example is volunteering. When someone coaches a team or spends a day volunteering, there's tremendous value to society, to the economy. It does not get counted within GDP. So what I like to do is instead of talking about GDP, which I find is a very narrow definition of economic progress, I love this idea of well-being. Now, here in Canada, we have something called the Canadian Index for Well-being. This is a made-in-Canada solution. It's housed at the University of Waterloo. And as you can see, it includes several different aspects. Now, GDP is included in standard of living a little bit because, of course, as we generate more wealth, our standard of living goes up. But that said, a lot of the activities that each of you do might not fit well into the GDP game, but likely they're going to find a home in one of these areas. And to me, this is absolutely crucial towards communicating the value of the sector, going beyond just the economic value generated and actually understanding that we can have an impact when it comes to healthy populations, to education, to the environment. And that value in the current system goes unnoticed. But we all know that this is what makes Ontario such a great province, is that we score very highly on a lot of these measures. So for the sector as a whole, that's kind of the broad macro picture. For the sector as a whole, I'm an outsider. I've never worked for a nonprofit. I volunteered for a few of them, but I'm the outsider here. But I have noticed, working at the Center for Social Innovation, I've noticed a couple things. One of them that's very clear is that the entire sector's identity is based on what it's not. Whether it's nonprofit or not-for-profit, we identify as what we are not. At the same time, the idea of revenue is sometimes a dirty word. And specifically the idea of maximizing revenue. And when we talk about maximizing revenue, sometimes people get a little bit awkward with me because they're like, ooh, that sounds like we're getting greedy. But the reality for me is that revenue is what drives the impact. The more money organizations make, the more they can spend on employees, the more they can spend on programs. So by maximizing revenue, you're actually maximizing impact. And that's probably the biggest point for me. At the same time, I think it's absolutely crucial that we start measuring social and environmental impact. So whether it's social return on investment, SROI, or a whole bunch of the other measurements that are coming up, I feel that this is absolutely crucial to say that we are moving the needle on some of the issues in the Index for Well-being and demonstrating that value. And really, I encourage everyone in the sector, I want you to embrace your whole economic value plus the social value. Now, in the impact investing space, we talk about this as a blended value. So we add the financial return on investment plus the social return on investment. You guys need to start doing this. You're doing it, and you're doing a great job, but it needs to continue. It really needs to keep going. The last point that I want to make is about diversification. And one thing, how many organizations were impacted by the financial crash and the recession, right? I'm guessing just about everyone. And one of the reasons is a dependency on grants from governments and from foundations. And for me, the analogy that I like to use is that if you've got a garden in your backyard, you don't just plant one crop, right? Because what if there's a frost? What if it's a dry season or a wet season, right? Maybe it needs different nutrients. So you want to plant a whole bunch of different crops. In the same way, organizations need a whole bunch of different revenue streams. Because I hate to tell you, but there is going to be another crash. There is going to be another problem, another crisis. Something's going to happen. We don't know what it is, but it will happen. And by having diverse revenue streams, this will build resilience within your organization to weather that storm. So whether it's selling memberships, whether it's selling goods and services as a social enterprise, whether it's community bonds, social impact bonds, I don't really care. All I know is that for your organization's health, you need to diversify your revenue streams. So the last point I want to make, this is the little sort of interactive, I want you to put down your BlackBerries, put down your iPads, and I want everyone to repeat after me. These are the sector talking points I want. We are an important sector of the economy. GDP is a terrible measure of well-being. Revenues are good. Impact is great. Thank you very much, everyone. You've been fantastic.